The day in Bikini Bottom had been long and bright, the kind of golden day that leaves soft ripples in memory long after the sun sinks below the coral skyline. The streets were quieting now. The laughter from Goo Lagoon had faded to distant murmurs, and the lights of the Krusty Krab had just gone dark for the evening. A hush settled over the town like a gentle tide drawing in. Down on the corner of Coral Avenue, the flickering neon sign of the Barg'N-Mart hummed faintly against the glass. "Open!" it declared in wavering pink letters, one side blinking, the other growing dim. Inside, the store breathed its last few minutes of wakefulness. Shelves neatly aligned, floors gleaming from a fresh mop, and one soft, bubbly voice echoing down the aisle. It was SpongeBob SquarePants, humming a tune only he seemed to know. His shopping cart creaked quietly as he rolled it along the smooth tile. Inside the basket were a few small treasures, a bottle of bubble soap, a box of coral flakes for breakfast, and a neatly folded pack of soft kelp wipes that smelled faintly of sea salt and sunshine. Nothing fancy, nothing grand, just the little things that made his simple life whole. He didn't rush. SpongeBob never rushed at night. He liked this feeling, the quiet after a busy day, the aisles glowing gently under sleepy fluorescent lights. Each shelf seemed to shimmer faintly, reflecting the soft golden hue of the store's ceiling lamps. The air was cool and smelled faintly of ocean breeze mixed with clean lemon polish. As he turned the corner into aisle 3, SpongeBob noticed the old floor buffer resting in the corner, silent now, like a tired worker who had done its job well. Somewhere near the back of the store, a janitor fish hummed a low, dreamy tune while sweeping the same small patch of floor again and again. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded gentler tonight, as if the whole store was sighing in relief that the day was over. SpongeBob stopped in front of a shelf filled with bottled bubbles, his favorite kind. Each label promised extra pop, or long-lasting float time, in bright, cheerful letters. He reached for one, holding it up to the light. Tiny air pockets shimmered inside, like captured stars. He smiled softly, reading the directions even though he already knew them by heart. Then carefully he placed the bottle into his cart, making sure it didn't bump into the coral flakes. He didn't need much, he never did. It wasn't about the shopping, not really. It was about being here in this quiet place when everyone else had gone home. The sound of the ocean outside, distant but ever-present, pressed gently against the glass doors. It was as if the sea itself were keeping the Barg'N-Mart company, rocking it to sleep. SpongeBob moved down the next aisle, his shoes making the softest squeak against the tiles. The cereal boxes stood like colorful sentinels in perfect rows, their cartoon mascots smiling wide even in the dim light. Somewhere far back near the storage room, a timer clicked off, turning half the lights a little lower. The brightness softened, and the store slipped deeper into its drowsy rhythm. He stopped for a moment, closing his eyes. He could still hear faint echoes of the day laughter, chatter, the occasional rush of customers looking for last-minute deals. Now only silence remained, and it was the kind of silence SpongeBob liked best. Not empty, but full. Full of peace, full of stillness, full of the gentle warmth that comes when a place is given all it had for the day and can finally rest. He looked toward the checkout counter, only one register open, light glowing faintly like a nightlight in the dark. A sleepy cashier fish sat there, resting his head on one hand, tail swaying lazily. When SpongeBob caught his eye, the fish smiled tiredly. "Evening, SpongeBob. You made it just before closing." SpongeBob grinned, setting his basket down with care. "I wouldn't miss it. You know how I like my nighttime shopping. The aisles are so peaceful. It feels like the whole ocean's taken a nap." The cashier chuckled softly. scanning the items one by one. The scanner made a low, sleepy beep with each pass, the sound blending with the quiet hum of the store's lights. Outside, the flickering open sign blinked one last time before fading to dark. Inside, SpongeBob took a deep, happy breath as if to memorize this moment, this calm between day and dream. SpongeBob carefully packed his small shopping bag, the soft rustle of paper, blending with the hum of the store's lights. He gave the cashier a cheerful little wave and a "thank you kindly," his voice warm and bright even at this sleepy hour. The cashier smiled back, tapping the register closed with a quiet click. "Good night, SpongeBob," he said, yawning. "Sleep well." "Oh, I will," SpongeBob replied, his eyes wide and kind. "And you, too. You deserve a good rest after all this price-checking." The two shared a small laugh, that kind of tired but happy laughter that only happens when the day is truly done. Then SpongeBob turned toward the glass doors, his shoes squeaking lightly as he walked. The air near the entrance was cooler, touched by the faint breeze of the nighttime sea drifting in through the automatic doors as they slid open. The parking lot outside was nearly empty, just a few jellyfish floating lazily through the soft blue dark. The lights overhead buzzed gently, creating little halos on the wet pavement. But before stepping out, SpongeBob paused, turning to look back at the Barg'N-Mart one last time. He loved this view, the calm glow spilling across the aisles, the distant hum of refrigerators, the faint reflection of the store lights shimmering against the glass. It reminded him of home in a strange, comforting way. Like his pineapple house, it was full of small things that made life bright soaps, snacks, and tiny reminders of normal days. He took a slow breath, letting it fill his chest. The scent was familiar, detergent, salt, and a little sweetness from the candy aisle. It felt safe. Behind him, the janitor fish shuffled by, mop gliding across the tiles with soft rhythm. SpongeBob watched as he moved, slow and steady, like waves smoothing the shore. The swish of the mop almost sounded like the sea itself, calm, endless, and kind. SpongeBob smiled again, his thoughts drifting. How many nights had he come here after work? Just to walk, to look, to listen? When the Krusty Krab closed and the world went quiet, this was where he found peace among shelves of jelly spread, coral snacks, and bubble refills. Here he could think. Here he could just be. He thought of his day, the sizzling fryers, the orders shouted across the counter, the familiar sound of Squidward sighing. It was all part of a rhythm he loved. But this moment, this stillness, was its own kind of music. The automatic doors began to close gently, making a soft whoosh. But SpongeBob didn't rush. He let them nearly shut before stepping forward again, just enough to make them reopen. He giggled quietly to himself. "One last whoosh," he whispered. Outside, the water of Bikini Bottom glowed faintly with plankton lights. The soft, wavering beams from the Barg'N-Mart stretched across the sandy street like ribbons of gold. SpongeBob stood for a while, his bag tucked under one arm, watching the lights dance through the gentle current. The ocean at night always had this way of making him feel small, but not in a bad way. More like he was part of something vast and peaceful. The same sea that carried jellyfish and shells also carried these tiny, glowing moments of quiet. A bus drifted past slowly, the headlights cutting through the murky blue. Inside, one sleepy fish leaned against the window, eyes half closed. The hum of the engine was low and steady, like a lullaby, passing through the town. SpongeBob started walking, his square shoes leaving faint prints in the sandy road. With every step, the sound of Barg'N-Mart faded, replaced by the whisper of water currents and the distant song of a conch shell. But even as the glow of the store grew smaller behind him, he could still feel its warmth, lingering like a soft thought in the back of his mind. He imagined the aisles now, empty and resting, shelves breathing in silence, the candy waiting for morning, the cart he'd pushed standing quietly where he'd left it. Even objects, he thought, must enjoy the calm after the crowd when the noise is gone and only peace remains. He looked up toward the faint shimmer of the moon above the ocean's ceiling. Its reflection wobbled and broke across the water like a sleepy eye blinking. SpongeBob smiled softly. The world, even underwater, had its own way of tucking itself in at night. He whispered, almost to himself, "Good night, Barg'N-Mart." And the store, in its own silent way, seemed to answer back a low hum from its cooling vents, like a sigh settling into dreams. The walk home from the Barg'N-Mart was never far, yet tonight it felt endless in the best possible way, a slow drift through stillness. The streets of Bikini Bottom stretched quiet and empty, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel lonely but sacred. All around him, the coral homes stood in half-shadow, their windows glowing faintly with nightlights and drifting television flickers. The only sound was the faint hum of the ocean current brushing against the sand. SpongeBob's bag swayed gently at his side, bumping softly against his square leg with each step. Inside, the bottle of bubble soap clinked faintly against the coral flakes, a small reminder of his little adventure. He liked the way it sounded, like the ocean's version of wind chimes. He passed Mrs. Puff's boating school, its gates locked and still. The cone buoys floated lazily in the distance, rocking in slow rhythm with the tide. The sign outside tilted slightly, creaking in the current. SpongeBob stopped for a moment, smiling up at it. "Sleep well, boating cones," he whispered. "You worked hard teaching today." His voice was soft, meant not to wake anything that might already be dreaming. The seagrass beside the path swayed lightly, brushing against his legs as though nodding in agreement. Somewhere above, a school of fish glided past in perfect formation, their tails leaving faint trails of bubbles that shimmered like stars. He followed their path for a moment with his eyes tiny glowing dots rising into the soft blue distance. Everything about the night felt unhurried, safe, and wrapped in its own rhythm. SpongeBob took a deep breath. The water around him was cool and full of that clean, salty scent that always reminded him of home. It carried hints of distant kelp, jellyfish drift, and something sweet, maybe a bakery closing up for the night. Passing by the chum bucket, he noticed it dark and silent. For once, even plankton seemed to have gone quiet. No inventions whirring, no frustrated muttering, only the soft glow of a single lamp inside, swinging gently as if sighing with relief that the day was over. SpongeBob smiled kindly at the quiet building. "Even villains need rest," he said softly, continuing on his way. Down the street, the Krusty Krab stood like a sleepy ship anchored in still waters. The neon sign had been turned off, leaving only the moonlight to glint faintly off the front windows. Inside, SpongeBob could almost imagine the kitchen, spotless now. Spatulas resting, fryer cooled, tables neatly aligned. He paused on the curb outside, looking at it fondly. So many hours of laughter and work and sizzling patties, yet at night, even the Krusty Krab slept. He felt proud of that, somehow proud that the place he loved also got to rest, to breathe, just like everyone else. "Good night, Krusty Krab," he whispered. "You did great today." The bubbles from his words floated upward, catching the faint blue light before vanishing into the water. It made him smile again, how even a whisper here could look like a tiny constellation. The streets began to curve toward home. In the distance, he could already see the faint, round outline of his pineapple house glowing warmly through the darkness. The lights inside were soft and golden, like a lantern waiting for him. Gary's faint meow echoed through the water, muffled by glass, and distance but full of love. SpongeBob's steps slowed. He loved this part of the night, the moment just before home. The in-between place where the mind was half in the world, half in a dream. Each breath came slower, deeper. He could feel the weight of the day drifting away, replaced by a floating calm that only nighttime could bring. He looked around one last time at the still streets of Bikini Bottom. The coral swayed gently. A distant jellyfish glowed pink behind a rock arch. Somewhere far off, the faint sound of a whale song rolled through the water, low, deep, and ancient. It made everything feel connected. The Barg'N-Mart, the Krusty Krab, the little pineapple glowing ahead. Everyone's sleeping, SpongeBob thought softly. Even the sea. He took another slow step, his reflection rippling faintly beneath him. The light from his house flickered against his face as he approached the door. Behind him, the last echo of the store's hum seemed to fade completely, leaving only the sound of his own quiet breathing, calm, steady, content. When he finally reached his doorstep, SpongeBob paused, resting a hand on the cool, textured surface of his pineapple home. He smiled, eyes half closed. "I think even Barg'N-Mart is dreaming now," he whispered. And somewhere deep in the ocean's hush, it felt true. The door of the pineapple house opened with its familiar soft creak, followed by the faintest squeak of SpongeBob's square shoes on the clean floor. Inside, the light was warm and dim, just one lamp glowing in the corner, casting gentle shadows across the room. Gary lifted his head from his bed of coral moss and blinked sleepily, his shell faintly shimmering in the light. "Hi, Gare Bear," SpongeBob whispered, setting his bag down quietly by the counter. "I got the kelp wipes you like. They smell like sea foam and nap time." Gary blinked once, then let out a soft meow, curling back into his shell. SpongeBob smiled and tiptoed toward the kitchen. He placed the coral flakes neatly in their cupboard, straightened the boxes beside them, and arranged the bubble soap and wipes on the shelf with his usual care. Even his small chores carried a kind of calm rhythm, the way one might arrange seashells on a quiet shore. When everything was in its place, he turned off the light, leaving the room wrapped in a cozy dimness. Only the soft blue glow of the moon filtered through the porthole window, rippling gently across the floor like moving water. SpongeBob stood for a moment, letting the stillness soak in. No sizzling fryers, no clanging spatulas, no chatter or bustle. Just the hush of home, the sound of quiet bubbles drifting through the water outside, and the slow hum of his little lamp. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking softly under his square feet. His bed awaited, perfectly made, with sheets that smelled faintly of clean kelp and sunshine. SpongeBob slipped beneath them with a small sigh, the day finally leaving his shoulders. Gary let out another drowsy meow from downstairs. "I know," SpongeBob murmured. "It's bedtime for everyone." He turned onto his side, pulling the blanket close. His eyes traced the tiny patterns of light moving across the ceiling reflections from the moon above the sea. They shifted and danced like soft jellyfish, pulsing with slow rhythm. Watching them made his eyelids heavier by the second. His thoughts drifted back to the Barg'N-Mart, the shelves, the gentle hum, the kind cashier. He imagined the store now, with its lights dimmed, aisles resting in perfect stillness. Maybe the jelly spread had finally stopped wiggling. Maybe the cart he'd used was standing neatly in a corner, dreaming of tomorrow's shoppers. He could almost feel it, that quiet hum of the refrigerators, the soft breathing of the store as it slept. Even in his mind, the Barg'N-Mart seemed alive in its own way, full of dreams about the lives that passed through it. In his imagination, SpongeBob walked once more down those aisles, not as a shopper now, but as a dreamer. The shelves glowed faintly, each box and bottle giving off a soft, underwater shimmer. The cereal mascots smiled wider, as if happy to see him return. The floors reflected the starlight that drifted through the water above, turning every surface into silver glass. He pushed the cart again, but this time it made no sound. The wheels glided silently, and the air around him sparkled with tiny bubbles. From somewhere far away, a melody rose faint and familiar. It sounded like the store's refrigerators singing in harmony, joined by the hum of the lights and the soft whisper of ocean current passing through the vents. He smiled, closing his eyes within the dream. The store wasn't empty. It was peaceful. It was home in its own way, just another corner of Bikini Bottom that found beauty in the quiet. The melody swelled gently, wrapping around him like a lullaby. The shelves, the floors, the aisles, all glowing softly, all resting together. The dream felt endless, but light. "Good night," he whispered, though he didn't know whether he was saying it to the store, to the sea, or to himself. And as he drifted deeper into sleep, the Barg'N-Mart stood in stillness under the soft moonlight. Outside, the sand settled. The ocean currents slowed to a hush. Inside, the shelves breathed quietly in rhythm with the tide waiting for dawn, when light and laughter would return again. For now, there was only calm. The world was asleep. And under the sea, peace had found a place to rest. When SpongeBob's footsteps faded into the quiet outside, the Barg'N-Mart finally settled into stillness. The automatic doors slid shut with a soft sigh, and the faint chime above them gave one last delicate ring, like a bell saying goodnight. Inside, silence unfurled, not empty, but full, the kind of silence that breathes. The shelves stood tall in their rows, glowing faintly beneath the sleepy hum of the ceiling lights. They had spent the entire day holding, offering, serving, and now at last they rested. A jar of jelly spread on aisle 5 tilted slightly, catching the faint blue shimmer of the ocean outside. It had been chosen and set back so many times during the day. Children had giggled nearby, adults had argued softly about prices, and SpongeBob's cheerful humming had filled the air only an hour ago. Now all that remained was memory, thin and beautiful, floating between the aisles like light dust through water. The shelves remembered. They always did. They remembered the rhythm of footsteps, heavy, hurried, joyful, small. They remembered the smell of sea salt and warm kelp buns clinging to customers' clothes. They remembered the distant sound of laughter from somewhere near the candy aisle, and the occasional squeak of a cart turning a corner too fast. Each product, every can, bottle, and box seemed to hold its own little fragment of the day, pressed gently into its label like a secret. A whisk whispered quietly to a row of measuring cups. A box of cereal sighed contentedly, its cartoon mascot frozen mid-smile. And somewhere far back in the cool hum of the frozen section, the refrigerator exhaled a steady, calming rhythm, the heartbeat of the sleeping store. A soft current drifted through the air vents, bringing with it the scent of lemon cleaner and ocean salt. It moved like a breeze through the aisles, brushing gently over the products, making faint rustling sounds as wrappers shifted and tags swayed. It was almost musical, a lullaby for the shelves. On the end of aisle 2, a basket of spatulas gleamed faintly, catching the light like small mirrors. They stood proudly in their display, remembering the laughter of a familiar sponge who had once picked one up and twirled it like a dance partner. The memory made the nearest spatula clink softly, as though sighing with affection. Everything in the store seemed to exhale at once a slow, unified breath of calm. Even the floors, still damp from mopping, reflected the soft glow of ceiling lights in silver ripples. The lines between tiles blurred, making the whole room look like one gentle wave. For a while, nothing moved. Only the sound of distant ocean currents pressing softly against the glass walls could be heard. Outside, a school of small fish drifted by, their scales catching the light like moving stars. One lingered, staring curiously into the dim aisles before swimming away again. Inside, the Barg'N-Mart dreamed. It dreamed of morning, of bright chatter and colorful chaos, of baskets filled and hands reaching. But in its dream, time was slower, softer. Every sound was muffled, every color muted. The aisles glowed with sleepy pastel hues, coral pinks, faded blues, and mint greens swirling together like watercolor. The shelves loved the quiet. They loved the feeling of stillness after giving all day. To them, this was peace, not loneliness, but fulfillment. The kind of peace that comes when every product is in its place, every light hums in harmony, and every box stands shoulder to shoulder, resting. A clock above the checkout counter ticked once, then stopped. It didn't need to count time tonight. The night was endless here. Somewhere near the front, the reflection of the open sign shimmered faintly against the door, though the letters no longer glowed. The reflection pulsed with the rhythm of the ocean tide outside, in, out. The store was breathing with the sea. The stillness deepened, wrapping itself around every corner like a warm blanket. Even the flickering fluorescent lights quieted, their soft buzz fading into a whisper. The Barg'N-Mart now floated in its own kind of twilight, not fully dark, not fully light, just a tender in-between where everything felt suspended in time. A can of coral soup tilted slightly on its shelf, swaying as a gentle vibration passed through the floor. It was only the current outside, the ocean shifting around the building. The shelves creaked softly, adjusting themselves, like old friends settling in for a night of stories. If one listened closely, one could almost hear the murmur of objects, tiny voices exchanging the day's memories. The mop by the janitor's closet yawned, its handle resting against the wall. The cash register blinked sleepily, its last transaction still glowing faintly on the screen. Even the shopping carts, neatly stacked at the entrance, seemed to hum a low metallic lullaby, their wheels gently touching like hands. Near the back of the store, under the faint blue glow of a freezer light, sat a row of popsicle boxes. They dreamed of laughter, of sticky fingers, and giggling children chasing each other down the aisle. One box leaned against another and whispered, "Do you remember the little starfish who wanted every flavor?" The other box replied with a faint crackle of its wrapper, "I do." He couldn't decide, so he smiled and took them all. The freezer hummed approvingly, like a gentle storyteller closing a chapter. On aisle 7, a lonely dustpan looked toward the door. All day it had waited quietly in its place, never chosen, never moved. Yet now, in the quiet, it didn't mind. The night had made it special. In this still world, even the unnoticed things mattered. The dustpan relaxed, letting its handle rest softly against the wall, feeling seen by the silence. Overhead, the store's ceiling fan turned once, slowly, creating a circular rhythm in the air, round and round like a lullaby in motion. The current brushed through the aisles, stirring faint scents, sea salt, lemon polish, and a hint of kelp-flavored snacks. The aroma blended into something gentle and familiar, a fragrance that could only belong to a place where the ocean and home met halfway. The shelves remembered SpongeBob's laughter most of all. How he'd hummed tunelessly as he stacked boxes. How he'd spoken kindly to each product, as if every can and jar had feelings. To him they probably did. And perhaps, because he believed it, they truly did come alive in moments like this, long after the doors were locked and the world outside had gone still. A faint glow shimmered on the tiled floor. It wasn't from the lights above, but from the moonlight filtering through the water beams, dancing through the ocean outside and slipping in through the glass windows. They painted slow-moving waves across the aisles, making everything glisten softly. Cereal boxes looked like tiny coral reefs. Rows of bottled soda sparkled like trapped starlight. And the shadows between the aisles swayed gently like seaweed in a tide. Somewhere in the electronics corner, a single radio crackled faintly to life. Its dial turned by itself, just a little click, and then a voice drifted through the static. A slow, sleepy tune, perhaps an old commercial jingle, warped by memory and time. The shelves listened. The song carried no words now, only melody, something calm and familiar, echoing softly against the tiled floor. It was the sound of the day's echoes folding themselves into dreams. Outside, a whale's distant call rippled through the ocean. The sound passed through the glass and into the store, so faint it felt more like a heartbeat than a sound. The Barg'N-Mart heard it, recognized it, and answered in its own quiet way, a tiny beep from a forgotten scanner, a soft thump from a shifting shelf. The night was no longer silent. It was alive, breathing, remembering, dreaming. The Barg'N-Mart didn't feel lonely. It felt fulfilled with the memories of everyone who had passed through its aisles, of every voice that had once echoed between its walls. And in the soft blue glow of the ocean moonlight, it promised to keep those memories safe until morning. As the night drifted deeper, the Barg'N-Mart seemed to slip into its own dream. The lights dimmed a little more, until only the faintest glow lingered along the aisles. It wasn't darkness, more like a warm, soft dusk that made everything shimmer faintly. The shelves, the bottles, the little boxes all began to breathe in quiet rhythm, rising and falling, with the sleepy pulse of the sea. It was as if the store had a heartbeat now. Not loud, not strong, but steady and kind. A pulse that traveled from one end of the aisles to the other, carrying a hum that sounded almost like a lullaby. The jelly jars glistened under the faint light, their colors glowing from within. Red, pink, lavender. Each one reflecting memories of hands that once picked them up, of laughter that filled the air when lids popped open. They remembered the warmth of SpongeBob's cheerful thank you as he placed one carefully into his basket earlier that evening. Now, they whispered among themselves. "Do you think he'll come back tomorrow?" one jar asked. "Of course," replied another, its surface catching the light like a smile. "He always does. He never forgets us." On the next shelf, a row of spatulas rested neatly, each one slightly tilted as if listening in. One of them, a shiny silver one, with a small dent in its handle, thought about how it might have ended up at the Krusty Krab, flipping Krabby Patties with joy. It had heard the stories how SpongeBob treated every spatula like a friend, how he talked to them, laughed with them, even sang to them. The spatula dreamed of that, of sizzling sounds, of laughter, of purpose. But tonight, even dreaming felt enough. Down by the detergent section, the soap bubbles shifted inside their bottles, glowing faintly with trapped light. Every bubble held a small world, reflections of faces, of moments, of the day gone by. They shimmered like little memories in motion. If one looked close enough, perhaps you could see SpongeBob's reflection smiling back, waving from inside the tiny orbs. Outside the store's thick glass windows, small jellyfish floated by, pulsing gently in the dark ocean. Their soft glow reflected inside, turning the floor into a drifting galaxy of light. For a moment, the entire Barg'N-Mart looked like it was under a starry sky, though the stars were made of bubbles and glowing plankton instead of fire. The shelves loved this hour most. It was the hour when the ocean and the store became one, when the sound of waves blended with the hum of electricity, when the moonlight rippled across price tags, and everything ordinary turned beautiful. The refrigerator section sighed gently, frost gathering along the edges like feathers. Inside, frozen kelp packets dreamed of picnics and family dinners, while popsicle sticks remembered the cool touch of small hands and the delighted thank you that always followed. Even the old freezer door, slightly dented from years of being opened and closed, seemed to smile in the dim glow. Then, from somewhere far down the aisle, came a soft clink. A can had tipped over not because of movement, but because it wanted to stretch, perhaps. The can rolled lazily a few inches, then stopped, resting comfortably on its side. The sound echoed gently, bouncing through the quiet like a pebble dropped into a calm pond. The other cans chuckled quietly. "Careful," one said. I know," the rolling can replied, settling down again. "Just couldn't sleep." The laughter faded into a contented silence. Above, the ceiling fan made another slow turn. The air rippled faintly, carrying the sound of faraway waves. It passed over each shelf like a hand patting them goodnight, making every box and jar sway just a little, as though nodding off. The clock near the counter blinked 11:47 p.m., its hands barely visible. It had no need to tick loudly now. Time didn't matter in the stillness. The Barg'N-Mart had stepped outside of it into that soft hour between wakefulness and dreams. And so the shelves remembered. Not just the day, but all the days before the voices, the footsteps, the quiet joy of being useful. They remembered what it meant to hold, to wait, to serve. And in remembering, they rested. The hum deepened once more, steady as a heartbeat. The ocean outside moved in rhythm. And within those walls of glowing shelves and silent aisles, the store slept peacefully alive with memory, yet perfectly still. The Barg'N-Mart drifted deeper into its slumber. Outside, the current softened to a gentle drift, carrying the sounds of the sea like lullabies, a slow whoosh, a distant whale call, the soft tapping of coral against the glass. Inside, the shelves no longer stood rigid. They seemed to sway ever so slightly, moving with the ocean's breath. If someone had wandered through those aisles now, they might have believed the store was dreaming. The light had turned liquid blue and silver ribbons dancing across the floor, shimmering like water poured through moonlight. Every shadow seemed alive, whispering secrets too soft for the waking world. And then a faint squeak. At first it was almost nothing, just a memory, perhaps. But then came another, softer, like the familiar sound of rubber shoes on polished tile. From the corner of the frozen section, a small shape appeared blurry, glowing faintly like a memory given form. It was SpongeBob, or something that felt like him. Not the bright, bustling version from daylight hours, but a quieter echo reflection of his kindness, his routine, his love for small things. He walked down the aisle, humming that same little tune he'd hummed earlier that evening. The shelves leaned closer, listening. He paused by the jelly jars and smiled. "You all behaved tonight, didn't you?" he whispered softly. Though his voice sounded like it came from underwater, the jars gleamed in reply, proud and content. He passed the rows of spatulas, his hand brushing lightly over one. "You'd make a fine Krabby Patty spatula someday," he said, almost like a father reassuring a child. The spatula seemed to shimmer with joy, its metal catching a spark of light. SpongeBob's figure glowed faintly golden now, like a memory caught between sleep and dream. He moved with slow steps, his reflection rippling across the tiles. The store recognized him, or at least the part of him that lingered in its memory. This was the SpongeBob who found beauty in the ordinary, who could look at a can of soup and see a friend. When he reached the cash register, he placed an invisible hand on it. "Good work today," he whispered. "You rang up a lot of smiles." The register responded with a soft ding, a sound that didn't echo but settled warmly into the quiet. SpongeBob turned then, gazing down the long central aisle. The moonlight stretched toward him like a path made of glass. The scene almost felt sacred, the humble shelves transformed into silent witnesses, holding the echoes of kindness that lingered after the day was gone. He walked down that glowing path one last time, humming softly to himself. His song was barely more than a breath, something about friendship, bubbles, and small joys that never end. And as he hummed, the store seemed to hum with him, every shelf, every product, every light joining in. The Barg'N-Mart became a choir of soft, wordless voices, the rustle of paper, the click of cooling glass, the hush of the ocean beyond its walls. It was music not meant for waking ears, but for the world beneath dreams. SpongeBob stopped near the exit doors, looking back once more. "Good night," he said. "Thank you for keeping me company." Then he faded slowly, gently like foam dissolving into the tide. Silence followed, but it was a full, peaceful silence, not empty, but alive with warmth. The shelves seemed to sigh, settling once more. The lights dimmed to a soft hum, and the Barg'N-Mart, wrapped in the ocean's quiet heartbeat, continued to dream. Outside, jellyfish floated past like drifting lanterns. One pressed softly against the glass, its glow flickering like a candle. The faint shimmer reached all the way to the aisle where SpongeBob's reflection had been moments before. The floor glowed faintly, then dimmed, as though the store itself smiled in its sleep. Time moved differently now. Maybe minutes passed, maybe hours, but none of it mattered. All that existed was the hush of the sea, the warmth of remembered laughter, and the quiet understanding that even places, even shelves and aisles and jars of jelly could hold love if someone once saw them kindly enough. And in that gentle stillness, the Barg'N-Mart rested, cradled by the sea, guarded by its memories, and softly dreaming of the little sponge who never forgot to say good night. The night had deepened into something hushed and velvety, that tender stretch of time when even the sea outside seemed to hold its breath. Inside the Barg'N-Mart, the silence was no longer absolute. A new rhythm had begun to stir, soft and unhurried, like the gentle pulse of a dream returning to life. From the back hallway, a door creaked open, releasing a faint smell of sea salt and lemon polish. The night crew had arrived, slow, steady, and half-dreaming themselves. They weren't loud or hurried. They moved as though they belonged to the same rhythm that rocked the ocean above. Their shadows stretched across the polished floor like sleepy waves. The janitor fish was the first to appear. He was tall and thin, with faded scales that shimmered faintly under the fluorescent lights. His broom glided more than it swept, making slow, circular motions that matched the quiet hum of his small radio perched on a nearby crate. The radio crackled softly with the late-night voice of Goo Lagoon FM, the kind of station that played songs older than memory itself, tunes about drifting tides, forgotten harbors, and the lull of home. The fish hummed along under his breath, his voice no louder than the ocean's whisper. Each stroke of his broom left the floor shining faintly, reflecting the blue moonlight that filtered through the glass storefront. Every few minutes he paused, leaned on the broom handle, and simply listened. The store had a sound of its own, the quiet sigh of air vents, the gentle hum of refrigeration, the faint tick of the clock above aisle 3. But there was something else tonight, something soft and familiar in the air, a trace of laughter that hadn't quite faded. The janitor could almost hear its SpongeBob's laughter, bright and musical, echoing somewhere between the cereal aisle and the candy section. He smiled. "That little sponge again," he murmured. "Always leaves his joy behind." His broom swished forward, gathering a few stray pieces of coral dust into a neat pile. The motion was slow, almost meditative. Around him, the aisles stood perfectly still, as if watching. The cans, the boxes, the glass jars all seemed to glow faintly, touched by the soft rhythm of his work. Near the frozen section, 2 stockfish worked side by side, restocking shelves with sleepy precision. They didn't speak much, just the occasional whisper of, "That one goes higher," or "Careful, don't wake the snacks." They'd done this for years, and in the quiet of night, their movements felt almost ceremonial. One of them, a small, round fish with gentle eyes, paused to stretch and looked out the window. Beyond the glass, the sea glowed faintly under the moon. Schools of tiny silverfish drifted past like a dream of stars. He exhaled softly, feeling his eyelids grow heavier. "It's beautiful out there," he whispered. The other replied, not looking up from his work. "But peaceful in here." And it was beautifully so. Every sound in the store carried weight but never noise. The clink of glass bottles, the faint crackle of the radio, the rustle of cardboard. Together they created a kind of music of the mundane, gentle enough to lull even the walls to sleep. Back at the counter, the janitor fish swept past the registers, his eyes lingering for a moment on a small sticky note someone had left behind. It was written in cheerful handwriting, SpongeBob's unmistakably. "Thank you, night crew. You keep the ocean's heart clean, S." The janitor smiled again, his fins trembling slightly with warmth. He tucked the note into his pocket like a small treasure. "He gets it," he said softly to no one in particular. "He really gets it." Behind him, the radio shifted songs. Now it played a slow, watery melody, something like a lullaby hummed through seashells. The janitor's sweeping slowed to match its rhythm. His broom traced gentle arcs across the floor, as though painting ripples in sand. Time loosened its grip. Minutes stretched into something timeless, not slow, not fast, but suspended, kind and patient. The hands on the clock drifted toward midnight, their faint ticking blending with the sound of soft bristles against tile. Outside, the moon cast silver veins through the window. Inside, the store glowed faintly golden, as if warmed by the ghosts of the day. The Barg'N-Mart was fully alive again, but gently so, not the buzzing chaos of daylight, but the heartbeat of purpose, of quiet care. Every shelf, every aisle, every shadow seemed to hum in harmony with the night crew's simple work. And through it all, SpongeBob's laughter lingered still, not as sound, but as feeling. The kind of joy that doesn't vanish when you leave, but stays behind like perfume in the air, a trace of warmth that the night itself chooses to keep. The janitor fish moved slowly through the aisles, the gentle scrape of his broom the only sound besides the murmur of the radio. His motions were steady, patient, like waves returning again and again to the shore, polishing each tile to a faint gleam. Behind him, the stockfish duo worked their way down aisle 4, stacking cereal boxes in perfect rows. The boxes were painted with smiling mascots and bright coral colors, though in this soft blue nightlight, all the brightness seemed to melt into pastel hues. Each box leaned slightly forward, curious, as if watching them work. The smaller of the two stockfish sighed, setting down his crate. "You ever think," he said softly, "that the store's still awake even after we're gone?" The taller one chuckled. "Still awake? You mean alive?" "Yeah," the smaller fish said, rubbing the back of his fin. "Like it remembers everything that happens here. Every laugh, every hello, every little mistake." The taller one smiled faintly, eyes soft. "If that's true," he said, "then this place must have the happiest memory in the ocean." They both laughed quietly, not the loud laughter of daytime, but the kind that fades as soon as it begins, like a ripple disappearing into still water. At the far end of the aisle, the janitor fish had stopped sweeping. He leaned against his broom, staring out through the big glass window that faced the open sea. The world outside looked like a dream, the water heavy and dark, dotted with pale glimmers of jellyfish and drifting plankton. Their soft, pulsing light spilled into the store, painting the aisles with moving patterns that shimmered like the reflections of stars. He turned up the volume on his radio just a little. A voice drifted through the static, the soft, familiar tone of the Goo Lagoon FM host. "Good evening, ocean dreamer," the voice said, slow and warm. "If you're still awake at this hour, you're either working or wandering in your thoughts. Tonight's tide brings us something gentle, a melody from the old days. Close your eyes if you can, and let the sea do the remembering for you." Then came the sound of a steel guitar, faint and distant, almost like it was being played from beneath the water. The tune was simple 4 slow notes, then a pause, then 4 more. The janitor's eyes softened. He swayed slightly as he listened, the broom handle resting lightly in his hands. The song filled the store's empty spaces. It floated over the rows of soup cans, through the cereal aisle, past the refrigerators and freezers. It wrapped around the shelves like a tender breeze, filling the quiet with warmth. The stockfish paused in their work. Neither spoke. They just listened, 2 tired workers standing in the glow of soft light, surrounded by boxes and cans and the hum of the sea. In that moment, it didn't feel like work anymore. It felt like being part of something gentle, a rhythm that existed long before them and would continue long after. The janitor closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost see the day again, SpongeBob walking down the aisle, basket swinging, humming to himself as he picked out his soap bubbles and coral flakes. That laughter, bright and sincere, still seemed to hang in the air. It was strange how something so small, a laugh, a smile, could echo through a place, outlasting even the day that birthed it. He exhaled slowly. "Places remember," he whispered to himself. "If someone leaves joy behind, it doesn't fade. It stays." The radio crackled again. "And now," said the voice from Goo Lagoon FM, "for anyone mopping up the last drops of the day, may the ocean keep you company." And the music softened, fading into the gentle hiss of static that sounded almost like the sea's breath. Somewhere near the stockroom, a box fell softly, breaking the stillness for a moment. The smaller stockfish picked it up, laughing quietly. "Guess even the cereal's sleepy tonight." The janitor smiled faintly without turning. "Then we'll keep it company until morning." His broom began to move again, its rhythm syncing once more with the ocean's pulse. Sweep, turn, hum, breathe. And the Barg'N-Mart glowed in its quiet labor, a small sanctuary under the waves, tended by gentle hands, softened by the echoes of a sponge's laughter, and watched over by the moon above. Midnight crept closer, slow and kind, bringing with it the calmest silence, yet the kind that feels like rest, not emptiness. The kind that reminds everything alive, even shells and tiles, that they too deserve to dream. Oh, midnight had finally arrived, though it didn't feel like a single moment more, like a deep breath that lasted forever. The Barg'N-Mart was bathed in silver and blue now, every surface touched by the drifting moonlight that filtered through the sea. The world outside was utterly still, and inside, the quiet had grown soft enough to feel not emptiness, but peace. The janitor fish leaned his broom against a shelf and rubbed his tired eyes. He wasn't really sleepy, not in the heavy way that made you want to collapse, but in that light, floating way that made you want to pause. His fins felt heavy, but content, his heart calm. He looked around the store, admiring how perfect everything seemed. Every shelf was straight, every box aligned. The glass doors of the freezers gleamed faintly, reflecting the ocean's blue shimmer. The world had slowed to its gentlest pace, a pace that asked for nothing but presence. Behind him, the two stockfish were quietly finishing up. One of them was humming, the same tune the radio had played earlier, that sleepy, wandering melody that seemed made for moonlight. Their voices, their movements, even their breathing felt like part of the same rhythm, slow, circular, unhurried. The smaller fish broke the silence first. "You ever think," he said softly, "that we're the luckiest workers in the ocean?" The taller one tilted his head. "Lucky? We mop floors and stack cereal at midnight." "Yeah," the smaller fish replied, smiling faintly. "But look around. Nobody bothers us. No rush, no noise. Just calm. Just time moving how it wants." The taller fish chuckled, shaking his head. "Guess that's true. Most people never get to see this place when it's like this. It's almost—" He paused, searching for the word. "Alive," he said finally. The janitor smiled without turning. He'd heard that before, years ago, from another night worker who'd said the same thing. "This store's got a soul," the old worker had said back then. "You can feel it if you're quiet enough." He looked down at his broom and nodded faintly. "Still does," he whispered. He moved again, sweeping past the snack aisle, brushing away a few stray crumbs. His steps were slow, deliberate. He didn't want to finish too soon. There was comfort in the movement, in the sound of the bristles on the floor, in the smell of clean salt air, in the soft hum of the lights overhead. The radio had gone quiet for a while, the static fading into the sound of the ocean outside. It was as if the sea itself had taken over the broadcast, gentle, endless, steady. A moment later, the Goo Lagoon FM host returned, his voice calm and kind. "To the one still working when the rest of the reef is asleep, thank you. The ocean sees you. The night holds you. You are not alone out there." The janitor's fins stilled. He smiled almost shyly, as if the message had been meant just for him. He turned down the volume, letting the last few words dissolve into the hum of the store. The smaller stockfish had sat down now, resting against a stack of boxes. "You ever meet him?" he asked quietly. "That Sponge? SpongeBob?" The janitor laughed softly. "Once or twice. Never seen anyone so happy to shop for cleaning supplies." The other two chuckled, the sound gentle and genuine. "Yeah," the janitor continued. "He's got that kind of joy that sticks to things. Comes in, fills the place with light, and even when he's gone, it stays. You can still feel it in the air." The smaller fish nodded. "I think the shelves remember him." "They do," the janitor said, leaning on his broom again. "Everything does, even nights like this." A long silence followed. Not awkward, just peaceful. A kind of quiet that feels like company, not absence. The janitor finally glanced up at the clock. The hands pointed just past midnight. He gave a small nod to the others. "All right," he said softly. "Half an hour more, then we rest." They didn't answer, but they didn't need to. Their slow, steady work said enough. The night crew moved in rhythm again, 3 figures drifting through silver aisles, their reflections shimmering across the tiled floor. The lights flickered once, as if the store itself was blinking drowsily. Somewhere near the front door, the automatic chime gave a soft, tired ding, though no one had entered. The janitor looked up and smiled. Just the sea saying goodnight. He kept sweeping, his motions slower now, gentler. Each pass of the broom left a faint gleam behind a trail of care, of presence. And all around them, the Barg'N-Mart breathed with them a quiet, glowing heart beneath the sea, alive in its stillness, and dreaming alongside its keepers. The janitor fish stood at the far end of the aisle now, broom resting lightly against his shoulder. The store was spotless, the kind of clean that carried not pride but peace. Every shelf stood tall and quiet. Every product faced forward like it was waiting for morning light. The hum of the refrigeration units filled the space like a low lullaby, steady and kind. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered once, then softened, dimming slightly as if the store itself knew it was nearly time to sleep. He walked slowly toward the front doors, his steps light on the freshly mopped floor. Behind him, the 2 stockfish finished stacking the last of the cereal boxes, their motions unhurried. Each flap of cardboard closed gently, each sound folded into the rhythm of the night. "All right," the janitor murmured, his voice soft enough to blend with the hum around him. "That'll do for tonight." The taller fish nodded and stretched, fins reaching up toward the ceiling. "You ever notice," he said sleepily, "how quiet it gets right before we leave? It's like the store's holding its breath." The janitor smiled, glancing around. "That's how you know it's happy. Everything's in its place. Everything can rest." The smaller fish set down his clipboard and looked toward the aisles one last time. "You think anyone dreams about this place?" he asked. "Like the store itself?" The janitor chuckled, but there was warmth in it. "Maybe it does. Maybe when the lights go out, the shelves remember every shopper, every laugh, every small kindness. Maybe it dreams of the sound of carts rolling and the smell of kelp soap." He turned the broom in his fin, slowly tracing the air. "Maybe it dreams of mornings of SpongeBob, coming in with that list of his, smiling like the world's simplest things are treasures." The others smiled too, quietly. It wasn't a loud or bright smile, but the kind that lingers, the kind that belongs in the softest hours. They walked together toward the front doors, fins brushing faintly against the shelves as they passed. The air carried the faint scent of ocean breeze drifting through the vents, clean, cold, endless. Outside, the sea glowed faintly blue, the stars rippling through the water like scattered lights. At the register, the janitor paused and looked back one more time. The aisles stretched before him in long, serene rows, perfect, empty, shimmering faintly under the ceiling lights. He reached out and gently flipped the switch beside the door. One by one, the lights faded, not suddenly, but slowly in waves. The glow dimmed down the aisles, leaving pools of silver moonlight and soft reflections in the tiles. The sound of the hum grew softer, too, almost disappearing into the calm pulse of the ocean outside. The Barg'N-Mart, now resting in half-darkness, looked more like a memory than a store, like a dream holding its own heartbeat. The smaller stockfish leaned against the door and whispered, "Good night." The janitor smiled and whispered back, "Good night, friend." And it wasn't clear if he meant the fish, or the store, or both. They stepped out into the quiet water beyond the glass doors. The lock clicked softly behind them, not a sound of closing, but of completion. Outside, the current drifted gently through the sea streets. Jellyfish floated like paper lanterns, glowing pale white in the dark. The night was cool and full of distant sounds, coral bells ringing faintly. The hum of a reef snail passing by, the whisper of bubbles rising toward the surface. The janitor looked back once more. Through the glass, the store shimmered faintly silent, content, breathing softly in the deep. He could almost imagine it dreaming. Inside, the empty aisle seemed to move with the tide's rhythm. The reflection of a passing fish flickered across the tile, then disappeared. A paper bag rustled faintly, stirred by the gentlest current. The shelves, the lights, the floors, all were still, and yet, in that stillness, there was something alive, a memory of laughter, a trace of kindness, a warmth that lingered even after everyone had gone. And somewhere, far in the back, a single neon bulb flickered and steadied like a heartbeat, slow and content. The Barg'N-Mart slept, and beneath the calm ocean night, the quiet hum of the store joined the rhythm of the sea, a lullaby for every worker, every dreamer, and every soul who'd ever wandered its aisles in search of something small, soft, and peaceful. The rest of the Barg'N-Mart had gone to sleep. Every aisle sat in peaceful darkness, shelves resting under a blanket of shadow. Only one soft glow remained, a pale golden light that shimmered gently above aisle 5, where the jelly spreads waited in perfect rows. It wasn't the harsh brightness of the day. It was different, slower, softer, like the moon peeking through ocean clouds. The beam reached down to the jars, painting them in faint halos of pink and violet. The jelly inside seemed to glow from within, catching every passing ripple in the water. Aisle 5 was the store's quiet heart now. Everything here breathed a little deeper. The air carried the faint sweetness of sea berries and coral fruit scents that felt like memories of morning picnics and laughter echoing over jelly toast. The hum of the lone light was steady, rhythmic, like a soft lullaby to anyone who wandered close. It wasn't lonely, not really. It was the kind of solitude that feels whole, the kind that holds warmth even in silence. If you stood there long enough, you could almost feel the ghosts of the day moving through it. Faint echoes of SpongeBob's cheerful humming as he compared flavors, of his little fin tapping the glass, while deciding between sea grape deluxe and golden bubble fruit. He'd stood right under that light earlier, smiling at nothing in particular, caught in the quiet joy of choice. Now only the memory remained, but somehow that was enough. The shelves still carried his warmth. The jars still remembered his touch. The light flickered once, just slightly, as if it, too, were remembering. Then it steadied, glowing a little softer. Outside, the sea drifted slowly past the store's glass walls. The current moved like sleep, slow, graceful, gentle. Inside, the faint reflection of the water rippled across the floor tiles, turning the store into something dreamlike. The shimmer of the surface looked like sunlight caught underwater, a moving liquid lace that danced across the jars. Aisle 5 looked almost holy in that light, a small underwater chapel of color and calm. Somewhere deep within the shelves, a tiny bubble escaped from between two jars and floated upward, wobbling like a sleepy thought. It drifted through the glow, caught the light for a moment, and disappeared with a quiet pop. The sound was so small, yet in the stillness it echoed softly, like a whisper that didn't want to fade. The floor tiles beneath the light gleamed faintly, not polished to shine, but glowing with that natural, quiet reflection of things well cared for. There was something sacred in the neatness of it all. Even in silence, the world felt tended to. Every few minutes, the light above gave a faint hum, a steady, kind sound that blended perfectly with the slow pulse of the ocean outside. If someone were to wander in now, they might think Aisle 5 was alive. And maybe, in its own small way, it was. The jars sat like sleepy sentinels, labels turned just so, lids gleaming faintly in the glow. Sea Grape Deluxe, Bubbleberry, Golden Coral Jam. Their names were small songs, reminders of mornings when Bikini Bottom was bright and busy, when SpongeBob greeted the day with a laugh and a spatula. But here, under this gentle light, those same jars felt like something deeper, tiny pieces of peace preserved in glass. The sweetness inside was unmoving, patient, eternal. Every ripple of the sea outside sent a slow shimmer across the aisle, like the light was breathing. The reflections moved up the shelves, danced over the jars, then faded again, each motion, like the rise and fall of a sigh. Time didn't really move here. It lingered, slow and kind. You could almost imagine the store thinking its own quiet thoughts. Maybe it was remembering SpongeBob's soft laugh as he'd reach for the jar that reminded him of jellyfishing mornings with Patrick, the ones where they'd chase glowing jellyfish across jellyfish fields until sunset painted the sky in coral hues. The light hummed again, faint but steady. It was almost as if the store itself had decided to hold on to that laughter, to keep it glowing here in this aisle where it could never fade completely. Nothing moved now but the faint shimmer of dust motes and bubbles in the water. The calm was absolute, yet never empty. The shelves seemed to breathe, the jars seemed to hum, and the light above flickered with the rhythm of memory. Aisle 5 stood as the last beacon in a sleeping world, a quiet lighthouse glowing gently for no one but the night itself. And though the sea pressed close outside and the rest of the Barg'N-Mart dreamed in silence, the glow remained constant, kind, patient. It was the light of care, the light of small things that mattered. The light of SpongeBob's joy still softly echoing, long after the doors had closed. The light above Aisle 5 hummed gently, steady as a heartbeat. Every few seconds it gave off a faint flicker. Not from weakness, but from rhythm. It was like it was breathing, glowing in slow patterns that matched the pulse of the ocean outside. If anyone had stayed behind, they might have sworn that something lived in that glow, not a person, not a creature, but a memory, a kind of warmth that never fully leaves even after the day is done. The jars of jelly sparkled faintly in the golden hue. Their colors, amethyst, coral pink, and honey yellow, looked almost like frozen sunsets in glass. A few bubbles drifted up from between the jars, shimmering as they rose through the light. It was a delicate sight, like a dream replaying itself over and over. Sometimes, if you looked long enough, the light seemed to bend into shapes, fleeting shadows that resembled movement, a small round outline, a square set of pants, a smile that never truly left. SpongeBob. He wasn't really there, of course, but his presence was woven into the air, the memory of his laughter, the faint echo of his shoes squeaking on the tiles. He had spent so many cheerful afternoons in this store, picking the perfect jelly for toast, talking out loud to himself about whether grape or coral berry went better with kelp tea. The shelves seemed to remember the sound of it all, the way his voice lifted at the end of every sentence, full of delight, the way he'd hum under his breath that same tune he always hummed when he was at peace. The light above flickered again, and for a moment it felt like the entire aisle brightened. The glow spread wider, reaching past the shelves and across the floor. The jars gleamed brighter, the labels almost shimmering like the words themselves were alive. In that soft pulse of gold, a scene seemed to appear not real, but not a dream either. The shelves faded away, replaced by rolling fields of glowing jellyfish. Their long tendrils drifted lazily through the sea, glowing in pastel colors, pinks, blues, and purples, all moving in a slow ballet. The ground was soft and sandy beneath the waves, the current warm and gentle. And there he was, SpongeBob standing in the middle of the field, holding a small net and smiling up at the sky of drifting jellyfish. Patrick floated beside him, eyes half closed in joy. Their laughter carried faintly through the water, soft and musical, blending with the hum of the jellyfish glow. It wasn't loud or bright. It was the sound of peace. "Hey, Patrick," SpongeBob's voice echoed softly, distant but clear. "Do you think jellyfish dream?" Patrick thought for a long time, staring up at the glowing creatures. Maybe. If they do, I hope it's about flying." SpongeBob giggled. "I hope so, too." And for a moment, the Barg'N-Mart, the shelves, the jars, the light, all seemed to share in that laughter. The sound rippled through the aisle like sunlight through water. The vision faded slowly, gently, dissolving back into the quiet glow of the store. But the warmth of that moment remained, folded softly into the light above aisle 5. The hum of the bulb continued the same low, soothing note as before, but now it carried a kind of tenderness. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a reminder. In the stillness, the shelves seemed to sigh. The jars gleamed faintly, like they understood. Each one held more than just jelly. They held fragments of moments. The time SpongeBob compared labels for 20 minutes just to pick the cutest jar. The way Patrick had once accidentally dropped a whole basket of bread and giggled until he cried. The way even Squidward, passing through on an errand, had paused to roll his eyes, but had smiled anyway, just a little. Every motion, every sound, had settled into the store's walls, into the lights, into the calm rhythm of the sea. Outside, the ocean current deepened, slow and velvety. It brushed softly against the glass windows, creating patterns of moving light across the floor. Inside, those same waves looked like gentle shadows of clouds drifting across the aisle. The hum of the light felt like the world breathing. There was no clock ticking here, no rush of time, only the slow dance of reflection of memory. If the Barg'N-Mart dreamed, this would be the dream it loved best, the memory of kindness, of laughter, of choosing jelly in the quiet light of an ordinary day. Aisle 5 glowed brighter for a moment, as if the store itself was smiling. Then the shimmer softened again, melting back into stillness. The golden hue thinned until it was only a faint pulse of warmth, floating above the jars. The sea outside whispered through the glass. The shelves waited, calm and endless. And the light, steady and patient, continued to hum a night-long song for no one but the deep dot. The glow above aisle 5 began to wane ever so slightly. Not fading completely, just softening, like a candle flame settling after a long burn. The golden shimmer mellowed into something gentler, closer to silver now, as though the ocean's night had deepened outside. It wasn't in a sad kind of dimming. It felt natural, like the light itself was exhaling. It had kept its quiet vigil through the night, humming softly over jars of jelly and dreaming shells, and now it was beginning to drift into a softer kind of rest. The hum of the bulb grew slower. The faint buzzing that had filled the aisle for hours turned into a deeper tone, almost like a lullaby in the key of sleep. The jars below continued to glow faintly, their glass catching whatever shimmer the light offered. The reflection of the sea outside shimmered across their curved surfaces, tiny flickers of movement, like stars rolling through water. Each jar looked like it held a small piece of the sky. If the Barg'N-Mart had eyes, they would have been half closed now. If it had a heart, it would have been breathing in rhythm with the ocean tide, slow, patient, content. Aisle 5 didn't dream of customers or chatter. It dreamed of stillness. It dreamed of SpongeBob's small moments, the way his fingers had brushed the shelves as he thought, the way he'd hum a tune about jellyfishing under his breath. There was a certain magic in those ordinary moments, something only the store seemed to understand. Every day brought countless hands, countless glances, countless voices, but SpongeBob's presence lingered longer, like he left behind a little warmth in the air. Perhaps it was because he moved through the world with gentleness, a kind of open wonder that touched even the smallest corners. That's what this aisle remembered. Not noise, not excitement, just that calm, quiet. Outside the store's glass walls, the deep ocean began to shift. The sky above the waves, unseen from down here but still felt, was beginning to lighten. The sea picked up faint hints of dawn, a slow silver glow filtering downward through the blue. The first thread of morning light touched the store's windows. It was barely visible, but it made the reflections dance. The floor tiles sparkled faintly as though waking from a dream. The jelly jars caught it next their surfaces, blooming with color. Pink deepened to rose. Blue softened to lavender. Gold turned clear as honey. The light above aisle 5 seemed to notice. It flickered once, then steadied. The hum changed pitch, rising ever so slightly like the bulb was greeting the new light arriving from outside. For a few moments, the two lights, the artificial and the natural, met and merged. The golden glow and the silver dawn intertwined, washing the aisle in a hue that felt almost unreal. It was as if the store itself was glowing from within. The shelves shone like coral reefs, the jars gleamed like treasure, and the faint pulse of the ocean's light played across everything, calm, slow, endless. If you stood there now, it would have been easy to forget where you were. You might have thought you'd wandered into the dream of the sea itself, a place where the ordinary had turned sacred, where time was made of light and silence. The hum softened once more, turning into a whisper. The store didn't speak, but if it could, maybe it would have said something like this. Thank you for visiting. Thank you for noticing. Thank you for being kind. And in that imagined whisper, the jars seemed to glow a little brighter, the shelves standing a little taller, as though every part of the store was grateful just to have existed in someone's small, good memory. Outside, the first fish of the morning drifted past, scales glinting faintly in the growing light. A distant choral bell chimed the sound of dawn in Bikini Bottom. The Barg'N-Mart didn't rush to wake. It simply rested in the early hush, content to let the light find it slowly. And still, that single bulb above aisle 5 glowed not out of duty anymore, but out of love. It was the light that stayed behind when all others had gone out, the quiet keeper of dreams, of laughter, of one sponge's gentle joy. It didn't need to shine brightly. It just needed to be there. The hum grew quieter, blending into the soft rumble of morning currents. The reflections on the tiles flickered like tiny waves. And as dawn began to fully arrive, the glow of aisle 5 met it halfway, a golden promise wrapped in calm blue light. Still humming softly in the heart of the sleeping sea dot, the ocean outside was slowly turning from deep blue to a quiet gold, Morning in Bikini Bottom didn't come all at once. It drifted, like the sea itself was waking carefully so it wouldn't disturb the dream still hanging in the water. Inside the Barg'N-Mart, the light above aisle 5 continued to hum softly. Its glow had gentled, fading from bright gold to a pale honey tone, as if it too was getting ready to rest. The shelves looked almost transparent now, edges softened by the incoming dawn. The world around it had changed. The hum of distant reef creatures was beginning to stir. The faint sound of bubbles moving upward filled the silence. Somewhere far away, the muffled sound of a boat horn drifted through the water, low and tender. The Barg'N-Mart's doors were still locked. The aisles still empty, but the quiet had shifted. It wasn't night anymore. It was something else, a breath between sleeping and waking. The single light flickered once, then twice, as if it were deciding whether to keep shining or finally let the morning take over. Its glow shimmered down the row of jars across the reds, the purples, the soft coral pinks, and lingered a moment longer over one in particular, Sea Grape Deluxe. That was the one SpongeBob had chosen the evening before. He'd picked it up with a smile that filled his whole face, holding it up to the light like it was something magical. And maybe it was. Now the jar sat quietly on the shelf, its glass catching both the faint light above and the growing daylight outside. Between the two, it shimmered like something halfway between a dream and a memory. If the store had a heart, this would have been it, that tiny jar glowing with the first color of morning, holding the last trace of night. The bulb above made a final soft hum. It wasn't tired exactly. It was content. The kind of contentment that comes when you've done your small part in keeping the world peaceful for just a little longer. Then with a tender flicker, the light began to fade. Not sharply, not like a switch, but slowly, gently, as if it were sighing its way into silence. The aisle dimmed in graceful layers, the golden hue melting into silver, then blue, then the soft, natural glow of dawn filtering through the sea. The jelly jars no longer glowed on their own, but their colors still caught the new light beautifully. The ocean's morning shimmer reached through the windows now, scattering faint patterns across the floor. The shapes moved like waves, stretching across the tiles where SpongeBob had walked just hours ago. It was quiet. Not empty quiet, but full quiet. The kind that holds gratitude in every second. Aisle 5 was at peace. For a moment it felt as though the store itself inhaled. The walls seemed to hum faintly in harmony with the sea, as if exhaling all that had happened in the long, soft night. A school of tiny glowing fish drifted by outside, leaving trails of light behind them that glided across the glass like silver ribbons. Their reflections brushed against the shelves as though saying good morning to the jars still standing patiently in their rows. The Barg'N-Mart was still asleep. Technically, its doors wouldn't open for another few hours, but the line between sleep and waking had blurred. The air carried a calm readiness, the feeling of a place just about to come alive again. And somewhere far off, the world above was beginning to brighten too, the surface catching the first sunbeams that reached down through the waves. The rays of gold mingled with the soft blue of the ocean, painting everything in a calm, pearly light. The single bulb above aisle 5 gave one last soft flicker, not out of duty, not because it needed to shine, but almost like a wave goodbye. Then finally it rested. The hum faded. The glow dimmed completely, and the aisle fell into the tender light of morning. It wasn't darkness now, only stillness. The kind that exists in those first few seconds before a new day begins. The jars of jelly stood quiet and proud, their colors alive in the morning sun. The floor gleamed faintly where the reflections moved, and in that perfect calm, the store seemed to whisper something too soft to hear, something like, "Everything small is sacred. Every ordinary moment holds light." Outside, the water shimmered brighter. The sea, awake now, carried the sound of soft waves against coral. Somewhere not far away, SpongeBob stirred from his sleep, smiling before his eyes even opened the way someone smiles when they've dreamed of good things. And though he wouldn't know it, the place where he'd once stood, the quiet aisle where the last light had glowed, still held his laughter, folded gently into the morning air. The Barg'N-Mart waited patiently for the day to begin again. Its shelves, its lights, its silence all ready for another chapter of small, shining moments. The night had passed, but the piece remained tucked carefully above aisle 5, in the memory of a glow that had watched over everything while the world slept. The ocean outside was still quiet when SpongeBob's dream began. Somewhere in the deep hush between night and morning, his mind drifted back to the Barg'N-Mart, but it wasn't quite the same store anymore. It was softer, slower, touched by the calmness of a dream that didn't want to end. He stood there, holding the handle of a shopping cart that shimmered faintly under a sleep golden glow. The wheels didn't squeak. They hummed, low and gentle, like a lullaby made of bubbles. The aisles stretched far and wide, curling slightly at the ends as though the ocean itself had taken the shape of a store. The ceiling rippled like the surface of water seen from below. Shelves glowed faintly, lined not with goods but with moments, soft, small memories that glimmered like jellyfish in a current. SpongeBob began to push his cart forward. It moved without effort, as if it already knew where he wanted to go. On the first aisle, he found jars filled not with jelly, but with laughter. When he opened one, he could hear Patrick's voice, bright and silly, echoing through the bubbles. It made SpongeBob giggle, too, a sleepy sound that rolled like a wave. He placed the jar gently into his cart. It didn't clink. It sang, a tiny hum that blended with the watery air. As he moved on, he passed shelves filled with nets, jellyfishing nets, each one carrying a faint, glowing ribbon of light. When he touched them, they sparkled softly, releasing a memory of sunlit fields of coral and the sound of gentle waves splashing against rocks. Every step SpongeBob took felt like walking deeper into peace. The next aisle shimmered with seashells that whispered. He leaned close to one, and inside it, he heard Gary's quiet little meow, the sleepy kind he made when curling up beside SpongeBob at night. The sound filled his chest with warmth, like being wrapped in a blanket of bubbles. He smiled and placed that shell in the cart, too. Down the next turn, the floor glowed faintly under his feet, marking a soft path that wound like a stream. Every now and then a small bubble drifted by, each one carrying something familiar. Squidward's clarinet notes, Sandy's laughter during one of their tree dome picnics, the faint creak of the Krusty Krab's door. Each memory floated near him for a moment before slowly dissolving into the light, leaving behind only calm. SpongeBob's cart began to fill not with things, but with feelings. Each item inside glowed softly, casting a soft swirl of colors around him. It wasn't heavy, though. It felt light, buoyant, as if everything he carried was exactly where it was meant to be. He turned into another aisle. This one was longer, stretching farther than he could see. The signs above the shelves didn't have words anymore. They had gentle symbols that glowed like constellations. One looked like a jellyfish, another a spatula, another a small bright star that reminded him of his best friend's smile. The air here felt different, slower, like it was waiting for him to notice something. At the end of the aisle, a faint light shimmered, and SpongeBob could hear music playing somewhere far away. It was the radio from the Barg'N-Mart, that same sleepy tune that had played all night long. But now it sounded like it was underwater, soft and far away, the melody bending like the tide. He followed it, pushing the cart gently forward. The floor beneath him felt like sand now, cool and smooth. The shelves around him rippled as though they were made of sea glass, and he could see reflections moving within them. Reflections of old days, bright mornings, quiet evenings with friends. The light ahead began to shift colors from blue to pink to a gentle coral gold. SpongeBob paused and looked into one of the shelves. There he saw himself, not as he was now, but as he always had been. Smiling, hopeful, busy making Krabby Patties with care, laughing too loudly, dreaming too deeply, living with a heart full of tiny, shining moments. The reflection smiled back. SpongeBob reached out, touching the surface of the shelf, and the image rippled softly before melting into bubbles. The bubbles drifted up and popped quietly, leaving a faint shimmer of golden dust in the water. He looked down at his cart again. It glowed brighter now, all those little memories, swirling together inside like a small ocean of their own. And in the soft rhythm of his dream, SpongeBob understood something without needing to think about it. He wasn't shopping for anything. He was remembering. Every laugh, every tiny kindness, every shared snack with Patrick, every tired smile from Squidward, every good-night meow from Gary, all of it was still with him, tucked into the aisles of his heart. And as he pushed his cart down one last stretch of golden floor, the shelves began to fade into soft light. The world around him thinned into brightness, not ending, just lifting like bubbles rising toward the sunlit surface. The cart rolled to a gentle stop. SpongeBob placed his hands on the handle and took a long, happy breath. The store, the aisles, the glow, they all felt warm and familiar, like a lullaby written just for him. He smiled softly, whispering into the dream, "Thank you." Then slowly the sound of waves folded around him, the light dimmed to a sleepy gold, and his dream began to drift away, carrying him gently toward morning dot. The glow from the shelves grew softer as SpongeBob wandered farther into the dream. It no longer felt like a store now, more like a memory shaped into rooms of light and stillness. Every step echoed gently, like footsteps on clouds. The cart rolled beside him, almost floating, its wheels leaving faint ripples in the floor that faded before his eyes. Somewhere above, bubbles drifted like slow snowflakes, glowing faintly blue and pink. SpongeBob tilted his head back and watched them rise toward an unseen ceiling. Each one shimmered with a faint image inside Squidward painting quietly, Sandy tinkering with a new invention, Mr. Krabs counting coins but smiling for once. They were all moments SpongeBob had tucked away without realizing. He reached for one of the bubbles, holding it in his hand. Inside it, he saw himself tired but content, walking home from the Krusty Krab with his spatula in hand. The glow around the bubble pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and then floated away again. The air in this part of the dream had changed. It was warmer now, touched by the gold of imagined morning. SpongeBob could smell the faint sweetness of kelp toast and the salt of sea breeze. Somewhere far away, a bell rang, the same bell that signaled the start of a new day at the Krusty Krab. But he didn't hurry toward it. Not yet. Instead, he turned down a smaller aisle, one that seemed to appear only for him. The sign above it read in glowing letters, "Memories on sale." He giggled softly. It sounded like something the Bargain Mart would actually advertise. But as he stepped inside, his laughter turned into awe. On these shelves were little jars of light, each one labeled with a tiny tag written in curling script. He leaned closer and read them one by one. First day at the Krusty Krab. Bubble Bowl rehearsal. Jellyfishing with Patrick. The day Gary came home. His fingers trembled a little as he picked up one of the jars. Inside, he saw a younger version of himself proudly standing in front of a sizzling grill, flipping Krabby Patties with all the joy in the world. The light from the jar glowed through his fingers, warm and alive. He placed it gently in the cart beside the others. Then another caught his eye, smaller, softer in glow. Its label simply said, "Quiet Morning." He held it up, curious. Inside, he saw himself sitting by his window, sipping sea kelp tea, while jellyfish floated by outside. There was no sound in the memory, no rush, no laughter, just peace. SpongeBob's eyes softened. He whispered to the jar, as if to the memory itself. "I remember that day. It was nice." The jar twinkled once, like it understood, and he placed it in the cart too. Now his cart shimmered like a small sun. All the moments glowed together, blending into soft ripples of color that danced over the floor. SpongeBob watched them, mesmerized, as he slowly pushed onward. The aisles curved again, forming a gentle spiral that led him toward a faintly glowing door. The handle was made of coral, warm and smooth to the touch. As he approached it, he heard something faint laughter, gentle and far away. Patrick's voice carried by a dream current, saying something silly about half-priced ice cream cones. SpongeBob chuckled, feeling the laughter wrap around him like a blanket. The dream seemed to hum back, the whole place breathing softly in rhythm with the ocean's tide. He stopped just before the door. His cart glowed beside him, filled now, overflowing with moments and memories. The aisles behind him had grown dim, fading into soft blue. The store was quiet again, like it was saying goodnight. SpongeBob looked down at the handle. He didn't know what was on the other side. Maybe morning. Maybe another dream. But it didn't matter, he wasn't afraid. He whispered, "I'll come back sometime," and smiled to himself. Then he opened the door. A gentle wave of warm light poured in, golden and endless. It didn't blind him, it welcomed him. The cart floated forward, wheels lifting off the floor, and drifted into the light. SpongeBob followed, slow and calm, his heart full, and his steps light. The last thing he heard before everything turned into the glow was the soft chime of the Barg'N-Mart door, the little bell above it ringing one last sleepy note. And then silenced out. The light on the other side of the door was softer than sunrise. The kind of glow that feels alive, not bright, but warm, golden, endless. SpongeBob stepped through slowly, his body lighter with each motion, as though the very act of remembering had made him weightless. The Barg'N-Mart behind him faded into distant shelves, dissolving into mist, signs turning to ripples. Yet it didn't feel like losing anything. It felt like everything he'd gathered, every laugh, every small kindness, every quiet joy had followed him here, woven into the soft hum of the dream itself. He found himself walking through open water now. The ocean wasn't dark or deep. It was glowing faintly from within, as though the sea itself had fallen asleep. Tiny jellyfish drifted past, their bodies pulsing with slow light, each one left behind a faint shimmer, like sparkles in the air. SpongeBob's dream cart floated beside him. It had grown smaller, or maybe he had grown lighter. The jars inside were no longer separate. Their lights had blended into one soft swirl, a living memory made of everything he loved. He reached into it, and took one last jar just to hold. It wasn't labeled. It didn't need to be. The moment he touched it, he knew what it held, the feeling of home. The warmth of his pineapple house, the smell of sea foam drifting through his window, the gentle creak of the floor as Gary slid past. He could almost hear the little meow that always came before breakfast. SpongeBob hugged the jar close to his chest, smiling softly. Then the cart, his silent companion through the dream, began to drift upward, its glow spreading wider and wider until it filled the whole space. The jars within it lifted one by one, floating free, turning into bubbles that shimmered gold and coral. They drifted upward, rising slowly through the dream ocean toward the soft shimmer of dawn. Each bubble popped gently, releasing faint sounds, laughter, music, waves fading into the hush of peace. SpongeBob watched, eyes calm and kind, knowing none of it was gone. It had simply become part of something larger, the soft tide of life that always carried him forward. The water around him grew warmer. He could see the faint outline of the surface above a glimmering veil of light that shifted with every breath. His reflection looked back at him from below, smiling with sleepy eyes. For a moment, he just floated there. No rush, no noise, only stillness. He thought about how every day was a small adventure, how every laugh at the Krusty Krab, every walk home, every talk with Patrick had been a story, and how every story ended in quiet, just like this one. He whispered into the glow, "Thank you for all of it." The ocean seemed to answer, its light pulsing softly, a slow rhythm, like a heart. SpongeBob closed his eyes. He imagined himself back inside his warm pineapple home, tucked beneath his blanket. The hum of the ocean outside his window, the faint drip of water from a coral shelf, the sound of Gary breathing nearby. The glow around him dimmed, shifting from golden to soft blue, the color of early morning before the world fully wakes. Well, his body felt heavy now, in that comfortable way dreams do when they begin to fade. He took one slow, peaceful breath. The dream cart was gone, but the feeling it carried remained a gentle fullness, a calm that stayed inside him like a quiet song. Somewhere far above he could hear the faint echo of a morning bell. Not the Barg'N-Mart's this time, but the real one, the start of a new day. The light swayed gently. SpongeBob smiled, drifting deeper into the hush. He whispered, almost inaudibly, "I'll see you again, Barg'N-Mart." The world around him faded into soft waves of blue and silver. His thoughts slowed, merging with the pulse of the ocean. The shelves, the aisles, the golden light, all became one single calm breath. And when he finally exhaled, the dream let go. The surface shimmered above him, a final glint of gold before turning white. Then the gentle sound of water against glass, the creak of his bed, the whisper of morning. SpongeBob stirred slightly beneath his blanket, a faint smile still resting on his face. His room glowed with that pale ocean light that only comes before sunrise. The hum of the sea was steady, deep, like the world's soft heartbeat. Gary was curled beside him, purring faintly in his sleep. SpongeBob didn't open his eyes. He didn't need to. He could still feel the dream, the peace of the aisles, the quiet glow of the jelly jars, the warm hum of memory. It lingered in the air like the smell of coral soap. He took one last sleepy breath, whispered a soft, "Good night," and drifted gently back into the rhythm of rest between dream and dawn, where even the waves seemed to pause and listen. The first light of morning slipped quietly through the ocean, a soft current of gold weaving its way down from the surface. It touched the rooftops of Bikini Bottom one by one, gliding over coral houses, drifting past sleepy windows and finally settling against the broad glass doors of the Barg'N-Mart. The glass glimmered faintly, fogged in patches from the cool night water. For a long moment, it stayed still like it was deciding whether to wake. Then gently, a hum began. Faint at first, just the slow rhythm of the refrigerators deep inside. Then the soft crackle of lights flickering awake. The Barg'N-Mart was beginning to stir. Dust motes, or what passed for dust beneath the sea, drifted lazily in the beams of light spilling through the windows. A few jellyfish floated by outside, their translucent shapes shimmering like drifting lanterns. The current nudged the front sign, and it swayed softly, making a faint metallic sound that rang like a yawn. Inside, the aisles glowed in pale blue morning tones. Everything was in its place, as if the night had carefully tucked it all in. The shelves stood tall and straight, their lines perfect again. Cans gleamed, jars sparkled. Boxes of coral cereal leaned neatly in rows. The air smelled faintly of salt and lemon cleaner, the signature scent of new beginnings. At the far end of the store, a timer clicked. The hum of the freezers deepened, the lights warmed to their full color, and the faint digital chime of the front system beeped twice a sound that, for the Barg'N-Mart, was something like a heartbeat. The open sign flickered uncertainly, as if stretching after a long sleep. Then, with a soft buzz, it glowed steady, bright red against the pale light. Outside, the streets of Bikini Bottom were still half asleep. The sand road shimmered under the early rays, and a few sleepy bubbles rose from the chimneys of homes. SpongeBob's pineapple house stood quietly among them, golden light brushing the edges of its spiky crown. Inside, SpongeBob stirred. He yawned, long and soft, his arms stretching out of the covers. Gary blinked from his spot beside him, gave a small meow that sounded like a sigh, and rolled back into his shell's comfort. The sound made SpongeBob smile. His eyes opened slowly, and for a second he wasn't sure if he was still dreaming. There was a warmth in the room that felt familiar, the same golden calm from his night's sleep, the same hush that had wrapped around the aisles of the Barg'N-Mart in his dream. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, then glanced out the window. The ocean outside was glowing softly. Small ripples of light moved through the water like drifting sheets of silk. SpongeBob could see jellyfish in the distance, hovering quietly in the dawn light. Everything felt still, gentle. He smiled wider. "Morning, world," he whispered. A few minutes later, SpongeBob stepped outside, dressed in his crisp work uniform, his spatula gleaming at his side. His shoes squeaked faintly on the wet sand, a cheerful rhythm that always made him feel ready for a new day. As he walked through Bikini Bottom, he noticed how calm everything looked before the day began. No customers, no chatter, no rush, just the city breathing softly. The coral buildings shimmered in the low light, and a school of tiny fish swam past in a sleepy swirl, their scales catching the dawn. SpongeBob waved to them anyway, because that's what he did greet the world, even when it was quiet. He took his usual route toward the Krusty Krab, humming a slow, happy tune. And as he passed by the Barg'N-Mart, he slowed his steps just a little. The big glass doors stood there, glowing faintly with the reflection of morning. Inside, the aisles were bright and tidy again, everything back to order, but somehow it all looked different, warmer, like the place itself had rested. SpongeBob stopped for a second. He couldn't quite explain it, but he felt something gentle tug at his chest, a memory he couldn't name. Maybe it was the dream, still lingering like the scent of soap bubbles. He looked through the doors and whispered softly, "Good morning, Barg'N-Mart." For a moment, it felt like the lights inside flickered in response, a small shimmer of warmth along the nearest shelf. The hum of the store deepened just slightly, almost like a sigh. SpongeBob grinned, lifted his hand, and gave a little wave. "Thanks for another quiet night," he said. Then he turned and continued down the sandy road, his laughter faint and bright, the sound of someone who still carried a dream inside him. The sound of SpongeBob's footsteps faded into the gentle hum of the morning tide, leaving behind only the soft buzz of the open sign. The Barg'N-Mart stood quietly for a while, letting the light stretch farther across its aisles. There was no rush here, only the slow awakening of a place that had learned to rest. The air shimmered faintly as the store came alive. A low hum drifted through the vents, the kind of sound that's felt more than heard, a vibration of life returning to stillness. The lights above flickered once, then steadied, washing the store in pale gold. Rows of cereal boxes caught the glow and shimmered like morning coral. Cans reflected silver ripples along the shelves. Even the mop bucket near the back seemed to sigh contentedly, as if it, too, had dreamed something soft during the night. The Barg'N-Mart didn't have feelings in the way creatures did, but if it did, it might have called this moment peace. From the ceiling, tiny bubbles drifted downward. They weren't part of the cleaning system or any machine, they just appeared sometimes, like gentle thoughts rising from the ocean floor. Each bubble floated quietly until it met a beam of light and burst, releasing a shimmer that faded into nothing. And deep within the aisles, the memories of the night and the hums, the whispers, the faint music that had once filled the dark, lingered faintly, like echoes in seashells. If anyone had been listening closely, they might have heard the shelves sigh as the morning current passed through. The jars and bottles shifted slightly, realigning in perfect rows. A single spatula rolled gently on its hook before settling again. Everything was right where it should be. From outside, the faint swish of a delivery boat could be heard, one of the early workers of Bikini Bottom bringing in crates of new supplies. The sound mingled with the bubbling tide, distant yet soothing, a rhythm of life returning. Light rippled across the tiled floor like waves moving through glass. The pattern shimmered over the checkout counters, over the baskets, neatly stacked by the door. For a brief moment, everything inside the store seemed to pause, as if remembering. The night had been long, full of quiet and stillness, but it had also been tender. The Barg'N-Mart had felt the calm weight of SpongeBob's dream, that soft gratitude left behind in the water. It wasn't something the store could name, but it was there in the way the air felt warmer, the way the shelves seemed to glow just a bit brighter. Then the first customer arrived. A sleepy-looking sea snail drifted through the front doors, gliding lazily along the floor. Its shell was patterned with tiny barnacles, and it wore a polite, quiet expression. It moved slowly past the aisles, leaving a faint trail of bubbles behind. The doors closed gently after it, the little chime ringing once a sound so delicate it almost felt like part of a dream. The Barg'N-Mart welcomed the sound. Another customer followed soon after, an old fish carrying a small shopping basket, humming softly to himself. His tune echoed faintly through the aisles, blending with the hum of the fridges. He stopped by aisle 5, right where the light from the ceiling shimmered brightest, and picked up a jar of jelly spread. If he had noticed the faint warmth around him, the calm that seemed to linger there, he might have smiled, but he didn't. The piece of it simply wrapped around him quietly, unnoticed, yet deeply felt. The morning flowed on like a slow current. The checkout counter blinked awake, its screen glowing faintly. The little scanner beeped once, high and clear like a bird greeting the sun. Outside, schools of fish swam past the large front windows, their shadows casting moving patterns of light across the floor. And above the doors, the open sign hummed softly in rhythm with the world. By now, SpongeBob was already at the Krusty Krab, apron tied neatly, grill heating up. He was humming again, flipping patties with his usual joy. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he still carried that faint feeling, the echo of quiet aisles, the glow of one light over jelly jars, the sound of distant waves through the glass doors. Sometimes, he thought, he could still hear the Barg'N-Mart's hum, carried on the ocean current, a sound too soft for anyone else to notice, but to SpongeBob it was familiar, a sound that said, everything is okay. And if anyone were to pass by the store right then, they'd see it glowing gently and the sunlight shelves neat, light steady, aisles calm as though the night had left behind a small, invisible dream that even morning couldn't wash away. As the day unfolded, time in the Barg'N-Mart moved differently, not in minutes or hours, but in moments of quiet. The hum of the fridges, the soft tap of fins on tile, the steady rhythm of the current outside, all of it formed a kind of music. Not loud, not noticeable, but endlessly soothing. Through the glass doors, rays of sunlight filtered in like golden waves, bending through the water and dancing across the aisles. Dust motes shimmered like tiny jellyfish, drifting lazily between shelves. The air smelled faintly of salt and paper, a scent that spoke of home, of morning, of calm. Everywhere the world seemed to breathe slowly. A delivery cart creaked softly near the back, where a coral-colored fish stacked new boxes of kelp chips. He worked without hurry, humming under his breath, and when he passed the cereal aisle, he felt a small, unexplainable warmth. He didn't know why, but for some reason, that aisle always felt gentle, like the air was holding a memory. If he had looked closely, he might have seen how the light curved differently there, how it lingered over one shelf a little longer, as though reluctant to leave. But he didn't. He just smiled, finished his work, and rolled the cart away. The morning continued in soft ripples. The world outside the glass doors brightened. The currents grew stronger, and far above, the surface of the sea shimmered with sunlight. The Barg'N-Mart, quiet and still, seemed to rest within that light, a small world inside a larger one. And somewhere between the flicker of the ceiling lights and the hum of the soda machines, something gentle stirred. It was not movement. It was not sound. It was simply the presence of something remembered, the echo of SpongeBob's dream. For a moment, the store seemed to breathe it in. The shelves felt steadier. The air seemed lighter. Even the soft reflection on the tiles took the shape of a faint smile. It was as if the Barg'N-Mart understood that it had been part of something meaningful, a dream about gratitude, about stillness, about how even ordinary places could hold a kind of quiet magic. Outside, the waves brushed gently against the glass. The reflection of the ocean's surface rippled across the doors like moving silk. Seagrass swayed nearby, and the faint sound of distant laughter, maybe SpongeBob's, drifted through the water. The store did not need to move or speak. It simply existed, calm, content, awake. As the hours passed, the morning softened into noon. The soft blue glow above deepened to gold, and the hum of the store settled into a steady rhythm. More customers came and went, unaware of the peace that wrapped around them like a tide. A mother fish passed by with her little one, guiding him through the aisles. The child pointed at the candy shelf, eyes wide, and the mother smiled. They laughed softly, kindly, and their voices floated through the store like bubbles. Each sound, each moment, became part of the Barg'N-Mart's melody. At the far end of the store, near the frozen section, the lights dimmed slightly as clouds passed above. The change was gentle, almost musical, like the store sighing into comfort. Outside, SpongeBob walked home from work, humming a song that only he seemed to know. The melody echoed faintly through the water and touched the glass doors for just a second. The open sign flickered, not out of malfunction, but like a blink, as if answering him. And in that quiet exchange between a dreamer and a store, peace found its home again. The sunlight shifted once more, spilling through the glass in a soft golden arc. Inside, everything gleamed: the jars, the baskets, the smooth tiled floor. The hum deepened to a slow, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of a place that had learned the art of stillness. In the distance, a school of glowing fish swam by, their reflections dancing across the doors. Their light mingled with the Barg'N-Mart's glow until it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. Evening would come soon. The lights would dim again. Another night would fall softly over the aisles. But for now, morning lingered quiet, endless and kind. And somewhere beyond the glass, the ocean sang. The Barg'N-Mart listened. And in that listening, it rested perfectly still, perfectly content, forever caught in the calm between tides. Good night.